So if I had to choose just one, I think I would say the most interesting initiative in fintech would be open banking and the trend towards having platform ecosystems in finance. And to take a very, very simple analogy, we could take the analogy of Facebook or Google entering into a market and having a platform ecosystem rather than a vertically integrated organization type of system. But perhaps even further, it's really the world before and after, let's say, iPhone, and let's say Nokia versus iPhone, where Nokia are ecosystems which are closed ecosystems. iPhone and Android are ecosystems which are open, where anyone can create on top of it. And I think this is what open banking does, which basically allows to get a lot of new entrants who can leverage on existing financial data of customers. So most interesting initiative in fintech today, I would say open banking and platforms in finance, which you're seeing pretty much everywhere around the world, that will further accelerate the new entrants getting into finance in general. So if I had 10 million to invest in a fintech startup, perhaps two answers on this. So I guess if we're talking about 10 million, we're thinking about potential return on that 10 million. So that means that you can't invest in a company which is too big. So you have to invest in a company which is still quite early. And since I really like this topic of open banking, who can leverage the most on open banking are perhaps some of the people who would be at the middle layer. So two companies which can be interesting. One, TrueLayer, which is based in the UK, and Tink, which is based in Sweden. And both of them are, I would say, early stage types of companies. I guess they would have raised between $50 million to $100 million. Valuation, I guess, would be then in the low, hundreds of millions of dollars. So potentially, can be much, much more than that. If I had a second choice and say, if I can invest in something else, I still like, the companies like, Revolut, like the companies like Nubank in Brazil. Those companies are still are quite expensive already. So they would be worth, let's say between $5 to $10 billion. So it means that in terms of upside, it might be less, but here it's much more an Amazon kind of play, which is, can these companies be worth 100 billion, 200 billion, even more than that? Perhaps they're following exactly the same blueprint as an Amazon of better, cheaper, faster, starting on something which is very narrow, expanding, adding on top of it. So Revolut, Nubank, those are the two types of companies that could fit the bill. So two companies in open banking, two companies in challenger banks. So what would be the most interesting financial institution leveraging tech? Quite a few, but if I had to choose just one, I think I would choose Ping An. Ping An, which is in China, which is expanding in the rest of Asia and also in the rest of the world, expanding both in terms of their retail coverage, but also and more importantly in terms of their technology. And here I think Ping An is really a financial institution, but it's also a tech company. They have their own cloud, they develop their own artificial intelligence, blockchain, etc. So very, very impressive in terms of what they do. So I don't know if it's a skill. I'll call that a mindset rather. And I would call that the mindset of an entrepreneur. And I think what all entrepreneurs have in common is that they don't really know what tomorrow will be made of, and they constantly have to adapt. And I think being able to adapt in today's environment, having this mindset, saying that tomorrow might be different, but it's okay, and I'll find a solution to whatever comes. I think it's really important. So I would say most important skill to be in fintech. That's the mindset of an entrepreneur, being able to adapt, being able to learn new skills, because the world of fintech is a world which is in perpetual motion. There's a book I really enjoyed, and perhaps you have read it too, which is The Tipping Point. And really the story behind The Tipping Point is that a small effect can have huge impact. That's really about the butterfly effect. And why I find it amazing and interesting is that it's really what we see in today's world. That's what I call, for example, hyperscalability, where you can see one company, starting today, and then in the next, few years, they will be, bigger than some companies that have been around, for hundreds of years. So the tipping point is not just about technology. No, it's really more around how can very, very small things lead to great things, but that can be, through people, that can be through, things which are harder to pinpoint and highlight than just, technology. But I think that's really the world we're in, which is we're seeing things that can grow hugely in a very, very short amount of time. And that's, of course, what we've seen with the pandemic. And so that's why I think that The Tipping Point is a really interesting book to read.